Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday event. This is a very special event as we continue to build out swag and a lot of the programs that we have, especially this new Saturday series on human performance. And the goal is to try to get some of the students to get more familiar with areas in the specific areas within science, medicine, healthcare, especially areas that you might not be familiar with. So today we have the psychologist for the Brooklyn Nets, which I never thought that a sports team would need a psychologist. But if you just think about the toll it might take to stay mentally prepared and mentally ready, this is definitely a great feat. So we have with us from Inspire Wellness, Dr. Paul Groenewal. And we just want to have him start by, just telling us a little bit about his journey, especially if you have a background in playing sports. And we also want to know, how did you get connected with the Brooklyn Nets? Because, like I said, this is something that, as a young athlete, never knowing that sports athletes needed a specialist psychologist. Uh, this it's interesting just to hear how that even came about. So before I start and pass it over to you, I want to start a poll. This is a short poll, just asking attendees, like, how do you feel about today? What word best describes you at this moment? Are you happy? Are you excited? Are you curious? Are you energetic? We'll just give you some time to fill that out, just so that we can start a quick temperature check on how everybody's feeling. Give it a few more seconds. I see 3 out of 9 have completed that. Okay, 5. Okay. And we will end in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's share the results. So a lot of people are excited. That's a great thing, because I'm just as excited. Like I told you, I'm curious to see how this all plays out. And then the next thing that I wanted to go over with you was our second poll, which is, when you hear the word psychology, what comes to mind? You can answer multiple choices here, but do you think perception? Do you think thought? Do you think mental health? Do you think therapy? Do you think craziness? Because sometimes when I was young, I used to think that it was associated with craziness. Preparation, self-care, hard work, a cry for help, or smart decision. But we just want you to pick any of the words that you think apply to the word psychology, and we'll give you a few minutes to fill that out. And you can pick more than one in answer if you feel they all which ones apply. But we just wanted to also get a gauge on everybody's thought process before we begin, to see if it's still in alignment after this session is done. So thank you for filling it out, and thank you for your time. We'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, we will end in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Share the results. So everybody says thought process, mental health, and self-care. So we thank you for taking the time to assist with the short polling. We're glad to get some engagement going. So Dr. Groenewal, I will pass it over to you to hear about your exciting journey, and thank you again for joining and giving us your time and your dedication and your effort. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Anthony. I really appreciate that warm up, and really glad to be here today. I look forward to this conversation. I say conversation intentionally because as I'm going through talking about what I would like to talk about and present on, certainly invite all of you to join in at any point. Stop me, ask questions, really help engage the topic. We'll be using polls throughout, so that's actually a great warm up to the poll process. Just to get a sense of where you're at and keep you engaged with this, the topic today. Anthony, appreciate your questions. In terms of my journey, I'm happy to start there. So grew up in New Jersey, played soccer, basketball, and ran track in high school. Loved sport, and that it was actually probably the biggest part of my identity, more than school, during the high school years. Went on to play college soccer at Calvin College, a small school in Michigan. And there, I think the interaction between sport and psychology really began to develop. Really enjoyed my psychology courses. And then also in terms of sport, like recognizing, looking back at high school and travel teams and even my college team, and realizing it wasn't always the most talented teams that were the best performing. It wasn't always the most talented players that performed they're at their peak all the time. And so recognizing the psychology between team cohesion and how we approach the game and our mindset and our thinking really spurred me on to become more and more interested in the dynamics between sport and psychology. I went on to graduate school at Fuller Theological Seminary out in Pasadena, California. And at that point, really dove into my doctorate in psychology, hoping that someday I'd be able to find a way to integrate the two. Um, Went the clinical route, spent time throughout my career in different settings. I was in the VA for a time. I was in the prison system in New Jersey for a time, in private practice and beginning to work with athletes, gaining more experience both working with collegiate, semi-professional, professional, like just athletes at all stages of development and experience. And as I gained more experience there, really enjoyed that interplay between psychology and um, performance, and continue to kind of develop that area in terms of my research and reading and going to conferences. And really with the Nets, at one point, it really kind of, my group, the group practice that I'm a part of kind of stumbled into it. A great opportunity came up. We knew the Nets were looking. We were invited to put our hat in the, our name in the hat essentially, and began having conversations with then the GM Billy King about their needs and how they are setting things up. And then, but it really began moving forward when Zach Weatherford, who was their former head of the performance team, became part of the team. Previously, it was really just helping out with the draft, and then occasionally, as players had some interest, helping out in that way. But when Zach joined, because he was in college at one point as strength and conditioning coach, he was with the Olympics. He was working with the Navy and the Navy SEALs for a number of years. He really had a great vision in terms of integrating sports psychology in a way that wasn't reactive, but was really focused on performance and human development, right? Recognizing that there was a need for the neck up and better understanding our players, better figuring out how to connect with them, and then helping translate what we can learn about them and help them learn about themselves to performance. So it's probably about we're on my fifth season now, being more embedded with the team, not just kind of a side piece, but more of an integrated piece where I travel with the team, not during COVID, but previous seasons. And then when they're in the facility around much more often. And so really my job is to continue to learn about the science that comes from the military and sport and performance in general, and then to bring it to the team, whether it's the team and in general, or it's each individual athlete, helping them understand their own personal psychology and strategies, some of which we'll talk about today, that they can integrate into their process and allow them to perform at their peak more often.
Thank you. I appreciate that description and background. Does anybody and that is on would like to ask a question directly before we get into the presentation? We like anybody to either come off camera, come off mute for an opportunity to have a direct question. If not, we'll come back at the end of the presentation for Q&A.
Absolutely.
With no question.
Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Dr. Groenewal, for being here. I have a quick question about, you mentioned bringing science and research to the team on both like an individual and team level. And I was just kind of curious what that looks like, if you have any examples of how kind of you take your clinical PhD background and your kind of ability to synthesize like the latest research and developments, and how you can bring that to the team and how you approach kind of teaching and integrating those topics.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll start broad. If you want me to be more specific, I'll even pull from an example that I'll use today. I mean, the two that came to mind right away is recently spending time in the resilience research before we're going into playoffs. And a couple of weeks ago, just spent time reading up on the research, grabbing some books that were out there, and really trying to break down for our team, right? Because we have to make it specific to our team, the aspects of resilience that we're doing well, and then other areas that I thought would be interesting to look at. So bringing that to the performance team, and then creating small presentations where I'm walking them through resilience and then strategies that might be helpful. From there, it could be them taking the strategies and then using them. At the same time, it also tends to create some discussion. We were talking about optimism and the importance of optimism and how we're fostering it and the way we're using our language. So that'd be kind of that team idea. In terms of a individual strategy, recently reading up on self-talk and some of the research about distant self-talk, the need to kind of step back, and I'll talk about that later today, but to put some of that out there, the importance of our language when we're talking to ourselves during performance. If we're focused on ourself and how we're struggling and we're saying, how am I going to fix this? That's very different than being able to step back and changing one word, which is how are you going to fix this, as we're talking to ourselves. And right, very simple strategy, could be helpful for some, not helpful for others, but constantly looking in terms of the research and the things that are being talked about, both in research, popular write-ups, what my colleagues at other teams or in the military are talking about, and then bringing it in a way that's digestible and usable for our team and our players.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for that insight.
You got it. Thanks for the question.
Any other questions out there? Okay, so I don't see any other questions. So I'll ask you a quick question.
Go for it.
I'm just curious to know. I heard you say that you play sports as well. Did you see yourself on this path as you were growing up playing sports? Did you really see yourself as a psychologist to the sports athletes, or did you see yourself as a future sports athlete as yourself?
So I would say in high school, that's when it was we'll see what happens here. Like, maybe I want to go into professional soccer. Let's see if I can make it in that realm. I think in college and in grad school is where I shifted to realizing, I think, like, my gift is and my focus is really in sitting beside people, walking beside them, helping them figure out their game and their strategies. I think in part because of my limitations or where I was at in terms of my physical abilities and where the game was going. But I think the other part is, like, I genuinely enjoy the work. And so was excited about that opportunity. Now, if you ask, did I expect to be in professional sport? And this will go to the goal setting that I'll be talking about later. Like, I don't think I really crafted that well when I was young. I didn't have that goal in mind. I think I had kind of a ceiling for myself rather than realizing, like, there's a lot of opportunity. Don't limit myself. I absolutely believe, like, I wanted to work in sport. I didn't think I would make it to this level. And to me, it's like a credit to the people around me, the support I had, just opportunity. And the fact that sports psychology in general, and that's definitely a message for me too, to put out to our young student athletes, is sports psychology as a area is really growing, just multiplying, in fact, in terms of the opportunities that are in the military. When I started with the NBA, with the Nets, I mean, there was 5 to 7 teams that had an identified sports psychology presence. Now we're to the point where we have a meeting every year, and every team sends a sports psychologist to be part of that meeting. Now, there's big differences in terms of how the teams are integrating and utilizing it, but it's definitely moving in that direction. Whereas you look like at a game like the MLB, I mean, they're kind of at the forefront where they've had the sports psychologist integrated with the team for about 20 to 30 years for many of the teams. So, long story, but just to highlight, like, I didn't know I would be at this point, and would definitely encourage others to really kind of set the goal of, like, being here and find the path with support and with kind of organizing the possible processes that are out there.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no other questions, you can begin the presentation. And I don't know if you have the option to click more, and I can access the poll for you. Just let me know what questions you want to go up when you're ready.
Sounds good. All right, okay. I will share my presentation. Everyone see it? Burnout recovery?
Yes.
Great. All right. And had thought through many topics and thought this was a great place to start. My hope here is not only that you'll learn more about burnout and the recovery, but you'll also kind of see my process in terms of how I think about things. These pictures for me are important. The lower two you'll see at one point, but the top one's important to me because of, you see the smiling faces, right? And to me, this is a reminder that, we have to go a little bit deeper when we're assessing burnout, where a person's at. Just the smiling face and seeing them and assuming from the picture like everyone's happy is not always helpful. At the same time, I'm also going to encourage you to know, well, or at least let you know, as we're going through burnout, talking about it, even if some of the symptoms, they feel like they apply to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're experiencing burnout. And even if you are, we're going to really focus on some of the strategies that we can put into place to prevent it and to overcome it and to recover from it and keep moving and to reduce the likelihood that burnout occurs for us in the future. So I went through my history a little bit. So I'll move on from that. So main points today. Really want you all to walk away with a solid understanding about what burnout is. And I'm going to focus on sport, but also might highlight some of the burnout, the understanding of burnout within work as well. I want you to understand how it develops, because for me, like that's one of the keys, right? Not just knowing if I, maybe I'm burnout or maybe I'm not, but knowing how it develops allows us to, one, have a better sense of whether or not we're burnout or someone around us is. The other piece, it allows us to figure out how to put strategies in place and what strategies might be helpful. And I'll get to that later on. And lastly, right, focus for me, especially as a sports psychologist, is not just identifying the problem. It's, and because I don't want my athletes afraid of problems, I want them engaged in it, to know it, to be able to look at it in the same way as they look at I want them to be able to look at game film after a game. After the game ends, you can't change anything, right? It's all data now. So we don't have to have a strong emotional reaction or we want them to separate their performance from their identity so that they can look at the game, understand it, and then put strategies in place going forward. Same with burnout. I want you to understand what burnout is, whether or not you might be experiencing some of it, and most importantly, what strategies can you put in place to prevent and or overcome burnout? And again, that goes for you and as well as the people around you. So burnout, a simple reminder here is that burnout is not necessarily something of a day-to-day where today I'm burned out, tomorrow I'm not, so the next day, 3 days later I am. Burnout is related to chronic stress. It's a chronic process. And so it can develop slowly. And it's something that we can, if we know the tendencies of how we develop burnout, especially in sport, performance, right? And as I talk about sport, I'm also talking about performance in the classroom, then we can catch it and we can work through it. Sport burnout, there's three specific areas that we need to consider for burnout. The first is physical and emotional exhaustion, right? This is the athlete that despite the rest they're getting, even if they have a game or two where they're able to sit, they're still feeling exhausted. And they might experience it, and frankly, it could be either of these two, right? It could be physically, right? They're feeling okay, and emotionally they're in a good spot, but like physically, they just can't get back to themselves. They can't perform at that level because they're physically exhausted. And then the other piece would be the emotional exhaustion, right? Physically, their body's solid, but emotionally, they're just constantly feeling drained. And that would separate from the work conceptualization of burnout, because when they first started to understand burnout, they really focused on only the emotional exhaustion. And once they started studying burnout within athletes, within performers, they realized they really needed to pay attention to the physical as well. The next area would be sport devaluation. And that's simply put, like just not experiencing the same value in their sport and performance. They're not looking forward to going out there and performing and being part of their team. They're not excited about the opportunity to put themselves under pressure because they're not feeling connected to the sport anymore. It's not feeling meaningful. And then the third piece being, their accomplishments, and really that's about their potential, right? Because everyone likely has different accomplishments, in terms of where you're at and where you're trying to reach. There might be a different sense of what you're capable in this moment, but really watching with whether or not you're reaching your full potential in terms of your athletic accomplishment. And it holds athletes back when they're burnt out. So some of the most important areas that we talked about. So the physical, right? The symptoms that we're watching for is that chronic fatigue, the gastrointestinal problems, right? And there, maybe a simple example, a past athlete, we knew, and this is not necessarily burnout, but we knew he was too amped up. He was too stressed out. He needed to find ways to reduce some of the stress he was experiencing in life because during warm-ups, too often he'd have to go back to the bathroom and would need to sit there and really kind of work out the gastrointestinal issues rather than be on the court with the players and being ready for the game. So it was a reminder to him of the stress he's experiencing. And that's what happens when we're burnt out. It causes sleep issues in terms of insomnia, can create too much sleep as well. Headaches, right? We can have a physical reaction to burnout, and hypertension, obviously needing doctors to help you kind of figure out if that's what you're experiencing. In terms of the emotional side, right, can create feelings of hopelessness, despair, boredom, anxiety, withdrawal, irritability, right? You might not experience it yourself, but you're snapping at other people, loss of morale. And even that, right, can be impacting yourself. I mean, all of this can be impacting yourself, but also impacting the people around you. Feelings of isolation. And then if we look at the sports side, it impacts your confidence, right? And then there's that lowered belief in self, your inflexibility, you're experiencing distancing from others or withdrawing from your teammates or even people off the court. Could be in school as well. And then sport in school, it just feels like another demand rather than something that's meaningful and something that you enjoy doing, and can also have impact in terms of the cohesion. You're feeling connected to others and the desire to be around others, and can increase conflict. The best way so far that they found to assess burnout for athletes is called the Athlete Burnout Questionnaire. And here's 3 items. When they give the questionnaire, for those who aren't familiar with questionnaires, for this one, there's multiple questions. It's not just these 3 items, but I just use this as an example. Like sport evaluation, the example would be, I don't care about my sport performance as much as I used to, right? So that's dropping off. You used to care so much, and now you're not connected anymore. It's not something that really motivates you and drives you. And depending on where they're at on this item, either almost never to almost always, and then a number of others that look at sport evaluation tells you if they're burnt out and how burnt out. Physical and emotional exhaustion, right? That item is about, I'm exhausted by the physical and mental demands of sport. So you're experiencing that one with both the physical and the emotional side. And the athlete has to think about, where they're at on that, as well as those other items. And then lastly, the other symptom area, reduced sense of accomplishment. I'm not achieving much in sport. Now that's an interesting one because that may or may not be true. Part of that is perception, right? But they might feel like they're not achieving as much as they're capable of. And frankly, it could also be true. They're not, that where they were, based on their abilities, based on their talent, based on how much the team relied on them, they were expected to perform about this level, whatever that means, right? The accolades, the points they're scoring, the rebounds, take it to school and look at the grades that a parent or the child is expecting from themselves, and they're not reaching that achievement level. So that gives you a sense of that, whether or not they're accomplishing these things. And here I'll also highlight, so burnout, though I'm talking about it and I want you to understand it, and I think it can be really helpful for athletes and student athletes to understand burnout, keep in mind, even if you find this measure on the internet and you take it, it's not specific enough yet in terms of our understanding of this science behind it to know, okay, this group has burnout, this group does not. Like right now, burnout is really qualitative, but the better we understand it and the more we actually use it on the flip side of understanding what's holding us back, what some of the barriers we might be facing, and then what strategies we can put in place to perform and to improve our process and improve our well-being and our performance, the better off we are. So that's why, even though we don't have a clear picture of burnout versus not burnout, this is a worthwhile place to invest some time, energy, assessment, and then intervention and prevention. So first poll for the group. Have you ever experienced burnout as far as you know? All right. Yeah, and that's fair. I'm glad we have a not sure because we don't always know, right? We have 4 yeses. We have a no. We'll wrap it up. We'll give, guess that 10 more seconds.
Okay, we'll close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Great, appreciate it. Yeah, and anyone, if you want to share, jump in. If not, we'll move on to the next poll in a second. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me, the not sure. One, because, and this measure could be helpful to use as an assessment. At the same time, even if you don't know if you're burnt out, some of the strategies we'll be talking about today could be helpful in the realm of performance and burnout. All right, so next poll. What area of life, right? Because I want to be a little more specific and get you thinking about specifically, what area of life did you experience burnout as far as you know? And I was very limited, right? I kept it a bit limited here, but okay.
Okay, we'll end it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. So we have some school, some sport, some area that's important to you. I especially like putting in the area that's important because I want people to remember, like, they're more than just an athlete. They're more than just a student. There's other areas that we can experience burnout. Sometimes burnout feels a bit global and can impact us in many areas. And sometimes it's only in one area, 2 areas. So, you could be not experience burnout with sport and your spiritual life, your family life, but you're experiencing it in another area, right? And so definitely important to highlight the burnout can affect so many areas. And definitely connect for me too. I mean, even thinking back to college soccer, I mean, I think that's part of it too, Anthony. You had asked about my experience and where I was going with sport. I started feeling a little bit burnt out in soccer. And if I wish I had some of these tools to work through it, I feel like I could have continued to climb and to grow more in the sport rather than kind of the leveling off I did at times. Appreciate everyone. So next piece I want to go into is the 4 stages. And this is really important in my mind because I'm big on teaching athletes and people in general how to assess themselves and how to understand the process that many of us go through, whether it's burnout or other areas. Because if we understand the process, I think we can be more specific and more accurate in terms of adding interventions and as well as knowing, right? Because we need to know first before we can intervene. Too often, right, whether it's anger or burnout or other things in life, it's the issue is sometimes we get to a place, realize we're burnt out, or we have an issue. And if we had caught it earlier, we can reduce the impact of it. We could also reduce the likelihood that it even occurs. And that's true with burnout. So wanted to go through these stages to help you understand. In stage 1, it's the increased demands. So it could be performance demands that could be on or off the field. Scheduling conflicts. Life used to go really smoothly, but it's hectic, and suddenly there's a bunch of conflicts, which just feels like the demand is higher. Increased pressure, and that could be external and internal, right? The coach could be surprised, or the parent could be surprised when the student experiences seems to be experiencing burnout. Not realizing that part of the pressure is coming from within, and sometimes it's even when they're performing really well, they start demanding too much from themselves rather than a nice step-by-step fashion of growth. And they're looking for big changes and demanding things and increasing demands on themselves. And physically too, right? Could be focus on that overload in terms of training. Stage 2. And this is where the thoughts come in, because first it's the demands, and then it's how we're thinking about those demands. And the most problematic aspect is when the thoughts surround the challenge is too much. And I like this picture, and this comes from the first slide. This picture highlights it for me in the sense of what's being handed to this student athlete is not necessarily the problem. I mean, it's based on what I'm seeing in her face and her reaction, it's the thoughts that she's having of this is too much. Maybe it's coming too fast. Maybe it's more demands than she's used to. Maybe she's just tired and it's the usual demands. So knowing that part of this process is how we think about our challenges and how we experience these demands is important, because the demands, we might still want those demands, but we need to make changes so we don't continue down this path of burnout. Stage 3 is the physiological and psychological response. So this takes us from the thoughts to the bodily and psychological reaction, right? And then this is where we start experiencing what some of us think of as symptoms: the anxiety, the tension we're experiencing, the sleep issues, the insomnia I talked about before. Sometimes we don't experience much psychologically. Some of us skip right to like feeling poorly physically, right? And so move towards illness before we even notice, like, oh, I'm tired. I'm moving towards burnout. And so our battery is down and we're heading in that direction. And then the 4th stage, right? We're there, burnout. So again, reiterating the fact that we don't always move through these stages. It's not always clean. Sometimes you have some of the physiological reaction, the psychological reaction, but you're not necessarily moving towards burnout. It's just a little bit more and you need to adjust. But at the same time, knowing that these are the stages that take place and bring you towards burnout, the better off we are, because then we put the strategies into place. So how do we change this is the big question. So fun little poll quickly. How do we stop burnout? What's your first thought? I think on this one, you might be able to list multiple. Do you know, Anthony?
Yes, this one in the bracket says select all that apply.
Great.
So you can have multiple options if you like.
So what's your best guess?
Okay, we have 4 responses. We will allow a few more seconds before we close out this poll. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Great. Yeah, and to me, great answers. Definitely highlighting the ones that I thought are the most potential most workable. potentially, right? Work harder, not necessarily helpful, right? Just working harder and increasing demands on ourselves, not likely to work, especially if we're truly experiencing some burnout. Stop doing things. We need to lower the demands. Maybe, right? And I think maybe the reason people stay away from that is me even highlighting demands are good, right? We want to have a fulfilled life. We want a full life. And so I often help athletes, instead of trying to shed the demands, rethink the demands. How do they put it in a place that it's going to be helpful? At the same time, I'll also put a quick pause on that of like, there are times where we need to reduce some of what we're doing. Maybe by taking a step back, talking with others that we trust, we decide, okay, we need to lower the demands. But I agree with the group in the sense of like, that is not the quick, easy solution, and can often leave us actually increasing the likelihood that we look back at that situation as burnout because we stopped doing it and we never tried it. We never found a way to work through it. So not the most helpful intervention. But absolutely, in terms of finding ways to change our thoughts, we're going to talk about that. Improving self-care, I'd like to touch on that. And developing mental skills that strengthen our mind. Great. And really glad no one said that burnout cannot be stopped. It's definitely stoppable. It's not an unstoppable force. All right, sorry, let's see. Oop, there we go. Oh, yeah, it went too fast. There we go. Okay. So you'll probably recognize you basically got this. I'm trying to get rid of this poll. Sorry, everyone. There we go. Okay. So you basically got this. For me, the best changes are made in stage 2 and stage 3. So we might not be able to decrease the demands. It might not be good for us in the long run to decrease the demands. So let's move on from that one, though it could be helpful to take a step back and look at it with trusted others, with input from people we trust that care about us and will give us honest input in terms of the demands we're making. But stage 2, changing our thoughts and how we think about challenges can be effective. Understanding our physiology and our psychology and the responses we're making are great interventions for changing burnout. I feel like I'd be remiss even to add here, right? The fact in terms of the additional challenges that COVID-19 brings to us. And even beyond that, we can go in terms of the racial injustice that we're experiencing in our communities and our nation, and the importance of those demands and understanding them and talking about them and working through them together. We don't want to get rid of those demands, but they add additional challenges for us. And it's important we understand the impact it has and the ways that we can work through it. So here's where I wanted to start, and you guys nailed it in terms of the self-care. And I ask each of you to pull out a piece of paper, take a snapshot of this screen. For those of you who preferred the paper, for those of you who have a paper, draw that big circle, and then 3 lines to create 6 different boxes. And I want you to think about each of these areas: the physical, the psychological, the emotional, spiritual, personal, and professional self-care, right? And I often do this with athletes and with performers because I want them to understand not that just themselves, right? There might be certain areas you're really attuned to, and there's other areas you haven't really thought about in terms of your self-care. So just take a minute, make sure you draw that, and then either unmute yourself or in the text box, I just ask you to put, what are the 2 areas of self-care that you're best at? Is it psychological, professional? Is it emotional, spiritual? What strikes you as the best areas for you in terms of your tendencies towards self-care?
Doctor, this is Gary. I'll go.
Great.
I would say for me, it would be physical and spiritual for me.
Okay. Those are your go-tos.
Yeah, for me, when, especially as a CPT, as a trainer, we have to model what we, for our clients, what we want to see. And I just noticed, and my brother and fellow trainer, and my trainer's on here too, so he makes sure I stay with it. Physically, when I'm physically taking it myself, I feel like it positively impacts all the other areas. And the same to be said about the spiritual. For me, when I'm closer spiritually, it allows me to deal with the stress better.
Love it. Thanks, Gary.
No problem.
Anyone else want to share?
I'll chime in and say that definitely, I would say for me, it would be personal and emotional. Only because when I was younger, I didn't know much about psychology. I didn't understand the purpose. And as I got older and tried to find a good psychologist, because you got to find somebody you have a great connection with, a great rapport, and the chemistry works well because everybody has a different style. It's more of a question style through therapy, but sometimes you need somebody that connects, or sometimes understands when you need some feedback. So personally, I took a lot of the stuff that I've witnessed over the years in sessions, and I apply them to my daily activity. Whenever I feel something, I'll grab a piece of paper and start asking the same questions they would ask me. So that's why I said personal. And emotional is, I feel like it's a challenge to not be reacted by your emotions. So the emotions can be considered a trigger. Something's going to trigger you. It's going to get to your emotion and cause a reaction. But if you react so often for something you're trying to change, then you have to assess your emotions. Why are you letting your emotions cause you to be triggered to have the reaction that you don't want? So those are the two things that I've worked on a lot through my life.
Love it. Thank you. All right. So going on to the next. Now, taking a look at this, and what I often have groups surprised by how many options there are in each of these areas, right? Because when we first see it, we often think about our go-to moves, the things that we are used to, the things that we've been exposed to. At the same time, I show this because I want people to begin expanding who they are and just a recognition of they're deeper than just one area. I want them to start thinking about the areas they're good at. And I also then move on to this to highlight just the depth of the impact that we can have on ourselves, right? There could be a number of self-care options in some of these areas that would be feeding you, that would be helping to soothe some of your concerns, to help with your performance by helping you recharge, refocus by doing them, but you're not used to them, or you haven't thought about them, or maybe you saw others doing it but didn't think it'd be helpful for you. So knowing that there's tons of strategies out there, right? And I talked before about the science of like, I think athletes are often surprised by the simplicity, because to use mental skills, to use mental strategies within performance, whether school or sport, we have to keep it simple. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes of meditation. If you could do it and you could create the time and that's something you're good at, do it. Great. It's not going to hurt you for sure. But you don't need 20 minutes of meditation to have a positive impact on your well-being, your self-care, and or your performance. So knowing that some of these strategies, even just putting in place for 2 minutes a few times a week, can have a great impact on your perspective, your well-being, your ability to connect to others. And right, the discussion we're looking at today is in the context of burnout. These strategies can be really helpful for reducing the likelihood of burnout and for overcoming burnout when you're experiencing in certain aspects of life. So that was broad, right? The self-care, the big picture, all these strategies that we can do. Now I want to shift into a more specific look at the strategies that are out there, and I'm going to tie in some of the strategies that we use for performance for burnout as well, right? So the first of the three that I'm going to cover is goal setting. We need to know where we're going and how we're getting there. Right. And I think this picture is great in the sense of we see a hiker based on her really nice hiking backpack. She probably has some experience with this. And she's looking out in, let's call it the future, right? She's looking at to where she's going. And our hope is that she's setting a goal. She knows where she wants to go. And hopefully she's got goals along the way of what she needs to hit in order to know she's on track. And so if we don't have that, for her, she's wandering. And for those of you who have experience with hiking or who've seen, tons of movies out there in terms of the hikers who either don't know where they're going or they get off course, or, we have stories certainly in the news related to people getting lost on hikes. If we don't have a goal, if we don't know where we're going and how we're getting there, then it's a high propensity to get lost. It's a high propensity we're not going to get to where we're able to get, right? Even looking at this in the context of life, if you're capable and if you really work hard in certain areas, we want you to reach your full potential. But it's really difficult to reach your full potential if you don't have goals and a strategy in terms of how you're getting there. And then with that, right, goal setting, whether it's this hike or life in general, it decreases exhaustion because, right, we're breaking our challenges, the demands that are in front of us into smaller bits. We know what we want to focus on. So instead of focusing on all of school, it's focusing on the specific areas of school that you want to improve. It might be a topic that you're really going to put extra effort into, and strategies for how you're going to put that extra effort based on time, based on strategies from your teacher or, for the students, from parents, helping you figure out how to get better at, let's say, math. For sport, not trying to work on, of course, we're going to work on all our game, but really honing in on our goals of specific areas that we want to improve can decrease the exhaustion, can increase the likelihood also of our accomplishment, because we know where we're going and then we start building a process around how we're going to get there. And also increases satisfaction along the way, right? If this hiker has specific goals ahead of her and she knows, okay, yep, I'm getting there. I'm getting towards safety, towards my car, towards, the next camp, whatever level of hiker she is, having a sense of what her goals are and when she knows she's attaining them increases her satisfaction. She's checking off those boxes. So question for the group and the next poll: do you set goals? And be honest here. I'm not going to know who answered it, right? I mean, I've gone on and on about how you need to set goals, but think about it and answer honestly.
Okay, thank you very much for participating in the poll. We will end it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, great. So nice mix here. And I love that no one put nope, that's too scary. What if I don't reach them? But I put that intentionally because like over and over, whether it's myself or other performers that I work with or just people in my life, like I think that's one of the biggest fears, right? If we actually say the goal, if we write it down, if we even think in our head, it's like, what if I don't reach them? Like that can be a scary proposition unless we really have we work on our mindset and our approach. So we have 2 who say, yeah, but only in my head. Great. It's a start. We have 4 that say yes, and I write them down. Great. A little bit more of a start. And then we have 1 that says I write them down and I tell people I trust what those goals are. That's fantastic. So just to touch on a little bit of the research and why I structured it this way, 90% of the time when goals were specific and challenging, which is like just beyond what you're capable of, there's a higher likelihood of you reaching that goal. especially when compared to like the goals being too easy or completely generic, like actually being specific and challenging was really helpful and increased the likelihood you reach them. The other piece, right, even to go further, those who wrote their goals down and shared their goals with others, another bump, 33% more successful at accomplishing the goals versus those who wrote it down but didn't share it with others or put that in their head and just developed it there rather than going the next step of writing it and then sharing it. So taking those steps increases the likelihood that we reach them. And for any of you who are like, well, that's to take it from my head and write it down and tell someone, like, okay, now that's uncomfortable. Like, encouragement there would be great. Yeah, embrace that discomfort. The other piece is reminding yourself, if part of it's like, well, but I don't know if my goals are realistic. I don't know the process. The nice part is you write it down, you share it with someone else, and they can help you change it. They can help you adapt it. They can help you figure out what's missing within that goal that they think it might get in their way in terms of a barrier. So lean into that. The next tip I want to talk on is that is just covered throughout the performance research that I cover often with athletes, that I watch for constantly in my, whether it's my group sessions, one-to-one sessions, team meetings. I'm watching for motivation. And I want athletes, I want performers, I want students to find motivation. And the nice part is it's not just the rah-rah, encouragement, getting them hyped up and then sending them out there. That's part of it, right? We want some emotional engagement to motivation. These three items in terms of autonomy, competence, and relatedness are what they find are innate, built-in needs as human beings. And if we tend to each of these areas, and I'll walk you through them, then we're going to increase the likelihood our motivation stays strong and that we reach some of the goals we talked about and our potential. So the first need, absolute need for us is autonomy. We need a choice, the sense that we can make choices. So for, there's certainly a lot in life that we can't make a choice on. Like if we have specific science homework, we need to get it done. If we have language arts, if our coach is like, hey, we're working on shooting today, we got it. There's some musts. There's some things we have to do. At the same time, we can create some choice in there. Maybe it's the order of what we work on. Maybe it's the skills because the coach is willing to say, hey, we were going to work on shooting today, but then what else you want to work on? Or at least setting that up with the coach. When to do the work could be something that you negotiate with yourself, with teachers, with coaches, with your parents, to make sure that you have some choice in it. And that could be as simple as if you got a real deadline, the choice could be, okay, I need to work on this. I need a quick break. All right, I'm going to give myself 5 minutes just to talk to a colleague, talk to a friend, draw, do something meaningful, so that you're reminding yourself that I have a choice. And I think these arrows are nice in terms of this picture right here, because they're going in the same place. They're just getting there a different way. And so you need to have a sense that you're choosing your direction. You're choosing the things that are meaningful in life to you. So autonomy, number one. Number two, competence. We need to have a sense that we're mastering something. The task, right, they talked about in terms of goal setting, it has to be just beyond our current ability, right? It's not fun to show up and do, think about it. It's like if in school, it's like, okay, come to school and you're the book that you've read before, you've done that before. So read that one again. Like, you'll know you're good at it. Just read that book. It's like eventually you're going to get bored with that book. You want something that's a little bit beyond you. You want something, a new story, a new idea to think about and to work into your repertoire in terms of learning. We have a need to master skills. And so we need to find opportunity for competency, for mastery, and have, goals that are slightly beyond our ability. We want we are driven by people who know how to get just a little bit more out of ourselves. And the same approach for ourselves in terms of that mastery. The last need that we have for motivation and fostering it is relatedness or purpose. And connection, right? Connection is key. Doing things in ways that keeps us connected to others. If it's an individual sport, if it's school, people can feel a bit separated, like, well, I'm just doing it on my own. But who's doing it alongside you? Who are the people that are teaching you? Who's part of your team that's cheering you on from the sideline, even if they're not there? Who are you doing it for? Right? Those are all aspects of relatedness. If we look at that, we spend time there, because for us to really stay motivated, it needs to be bigger than ourselves, and it needs to be others involved as well. It's just part of how we're wired. So to increase our motivation, we need to pay attention to autonomy, competence, and relatedness. The last skill I want to highlight for performance is our self-talk, right? And this goes back to one of the questions earlier. We have to be kind to ourselves along the way. I mean, I guess we don't have to, but if we want to perform at our best, if we want to increase the likelihood that we're going to keep showing up with great energy, if we want to actually have our mind fully available to take things in, we need to find a way to be kind to ourselves. And that doesn't mean unrealistic optimism. It doesn't mean just basically finding all kinds of ways just to make ourselves feel great all the time. We don't necessarily need that, but we need kindness. We need a sense of realism and encouragement going on within ourselves. And I'm going to self-talk here, because whether we know it or not, and some of you probably know it, there's some of us are really connected to the fact that we're always thinking. There's that inner dialogue constantly occurring. Others, it's not necessarily the thoughts as much you're tuned to as the feelings, or your response to things in terms of the emotion and what your body does. But just know, no matter what you're thinking, right? As you're thinking, that self-talk is occurring. And so 2 skills kind of in this realm that I like, that are based in science and that I really want performers to know is one is related to the idea of negative, neutral, and positive. And many of you probably know we are wired for negativity, right? And in part because it's adaptive, it keeps us safe. If we're walking up to a cliff like the woman in that hiking picture, we want a sense of like, hey, this is dangerous, be careful, not just all this positive sense of like, oh, this is great, I'm heading towards the cliff, I'm not experiencing anything negative, right? We want some negativity to hold us back and keep us safe. Same with, being in an environment where there's any other risk, animals, in sport and in school, we need, when we're falling behind on an assignment, we need that sense of like, oh, I'm falling behind, I need to catch up, right? That can be experienced as negativity, but that's needed. At the same time, the negativity is going to come easy. We need to work harder in terms of our self-talk, in terms of the neutral and the positive. So I really help my athletes pay attention to their self-talk. What are they saying to themselves when they make a mistake? What are they saying to themselves when the demands are up, when they're experiencing pressure? And while it's helpful to have the desire to do well and that negative doubt and the things that can drive you to work harder, we also need more of the neutral, more of the positive, the encouraging yourself, telling yourself to stay in the moment can be neutral. Saying, I got this shot's going in. I can do well on this test. The way we talk to ourselves, because we're such language-driven beings, is really important. We need to understand the language you're using and how we can make adjustments. The second part to self-talk is related to, I talked about the distant self-talk, the ability to step back, right? So when a mistake occurs, often what we say to ourselves is, how will I fix this? How can I get better at this? Like, right? And the key there is the I. It's a self-demand. There's something about, and there's research behind, there's something about our ability to change the I to a you that allows us to step back and take less responsibility for what happened as an indication of our identity. It allows us to, by saying, how will you fix this? I think in part, it's a reminder that it's a behavior that occurred that you need to make the adjustment. It's something outside of yourself that occurred that you want to be better at. So how will you fix this can drive you, can get you thinking about what the next steps are, rather than becoming smaller or focusing on the negative or looking at yourself as incapable. It's how will you fix this from a better distance. And to wrap up, I wanted to, saw this actually just recently, May 10th, Teresa, former WNBA player, actually played for Liberty and many areas of basketball. I just want to play this for you. Thought it was a helpful story to highlight some of what we talked about today.
Of that. But this is what happened to me. And I go home and I share this with my family. My family said to me, you can become whatever you desire to become. Know your value. I get a chance to play on the 1988 Olympic team. Now, I've been told as an 8th grader, I would never be great playing this game. I get a chance to play on the 1988 Olympic team. And then I'm playing. We're in Seoul, South Korea. I'll never forget it. Seoul, South Korea, and we get back. We win the gold medal, and I'm on the stand. I'm like, oh God, I'm the youngest. I'm like, whoo, this is awesome. But everybody else is crying. I'm on the stand. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. I'm getting the medal. I get the medal. We get home. I said, Ma, I know I told you everything that I do in this game, that it is yours. But I need this medal for 1 second. I need this for 1 second, Ma. Remember, I'm from a place of 882 people. I don't need a car. I don't need a bicycle, nothing to get to your house. The house is right there. I can touch it. I can touch it. We're so close. So I get home. My mom said, where you going? This is after midnight. She said, where you going? I said, I'll be right back. I want a full-out sprint, you guys. You hear me right now. I want a full-out sprint. I get to this house. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. It's midnight. So nobody opens the door. I hit it again. So you know how you duck down? And you look up under the door and see if the lights gonna come on. Hey, I saw the lights come on. I said, okay, they coming to the door. Come to the door. That coach that told me as an 8th grader I would never be great. I took that medal off my neck. He opened up the door. I said, bang! Only 12 of the best in the world get this. Only 12. So why did I share that with you? Is because understanding who you are, understanding your value, understanding your worth is so important. You cannot allow one person to tell you who you are and what you cannot become. If you do, you allow them to create your destiny. You can't do that. You can't. It's impossible. Know who you are and get the last laugh. Ha ha, I did.
So I love that. Before I go into why I love that, I just want to see if you sit with it, the last poll, what mental skills did you see evidence of?
So we see 3 responses. Anybody else would like to participate before we close out this last poll? Thank you, thank you. Okay, ending in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you see it, right? You see her goal setting, right? She set goals. She knew what she wanted to do. I'm sure there's people that helped her along the way figure out how to do it. Coaches, family clearly was part of her process, but she set goals. She knew what she wanted, even when she had doubters. She had people who did not think she could reach the goals that she had. She had autonomy, right? Without a doubt, she had made choices in her career. She made choices about what game she wanted to play, and basketball, even though she got that discouragement, basketball was part of her choice to continue at that, to work hard. Competence, to make it to that level, no doubt, she went out to master basketball. She wanted to be great. And the fact that gave her such joy to stand on that podium to get that medal, there's evidence of that. The relatedness, right? She mentioned that whatever she did in basketball, that was for her mom, right? So she was connected. The coach had an impact on her. She was with her teammates. There was some joy in that relatedness. And then definitely highlighting the 2 biggest areas for me, the self-talk being the last one. She, without a doubt, you can feel it, right? In terms of how she talked about herself. she highlighted someone that doubted her, but not in a way that made her, like, the way she talked about it, it wasn't making her small. It was an opportunity to take on a challenge and to face it and to get better and to reach the level that she did. So just to hear her talk, it just oozes that positive self-talk and her ability to overcome difficult situations. So I thought that, that as a person, some thoughts, some ideas, her energy, she is worth kind of having the last bit of my presentation here. So I thank you all for the time. Such a joy to present to you all. Thanks for the participation. If you have any questions, feel free to bring them now. I'll be happy to talk with you some more before we wrap up.
Yes, we would like anybody that has any questions, final thoughts, anything on the presentation, please feel free to come off mute. Feel free to ask your question directly.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for all this information. Is, believe me, beyond like all the information you just give us right now is really, really important for me, especially because I have a 14-year-old that plays baseball, and I can use all of this to help him out in his game and also his school too. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. Absolutely. Pleasure to be here and glad you found it usable.
Hey, Doctor, I guess I'll go next. I just definitely appreciate your time. I'm actually in Bed-Stuy as we speak, as I'm talking to you right now. But just thank you for the time, the insight. Myself and Coach Brian are really looking to work with young adults more so in our personal training. And yeah, this was definitely helpful, man. So I just appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you so much. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I also want to just echo what everyone said. Thanks so much, Dr. Groenewal. This is great. I think a lot of these concepts can be applied to like other areas of life too, besides sports and school. So I think it's like they're just really great concepts for kind of living life in the best way possible. So thanks again for your time.
Oh, thank you, Phil.
So Dr. Groenewal, something stood out to me during something you said about the kind of like the negative nature of thought process. So I was just curious to know, it appears that we live in a fear-based society. How do we break that mold of this fear-based society? Everything seems doubtful. Everything seems to be afraid. How do you then change the mindset to a winner that anything is possible? Because as we're learning, if you don't think it, if you don't speak it into existence, if you don't write it down so your brain can see your process and start trying to think about ways to achieve it, how do we mentally break that negative mindset to get to a winner's mindset?
Yeah, great question. For me, we have to be intentional and we have to be consistent. And that goes back to earlier where I talked about they're putting strategies in place. They don't have to be long and require a ton of our time, but it does require intention. It does require some action. And so for me, I just kind of was drawn to that question and thought of one, the research behind gratitude and the importance of savoring things in life. And so, I mean, it could be as simple as each day spending time, 5 minutes, writing down 3 things that you're grateful for. It could be visualizing, right? You're going into a pressure situation and 2 hours beforehand, visualizing things in your life that are going well, or people, just things that make sense to you. And to me, like part of I'm thinking about right, so many faith practices, there's consistency involved, whether it's going to the church, the mosque, devotions, prayer, that's part of that is, right, could be talked about like, well, you do that throughout life, but at the same time, there might be just having a good cadence to things is important. So the same with our positivity. So we know we're going to naturally invest in negative. And we need to, right? I don't want you to get rid of it because it keeps us safe. It keeps us driven too, if contained well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sorry, Robert.
No worries. I thought I was losing you guys. So we can absolutely have that negativity there. But and maybe that's another way to present it. So recently I talked to the performance team about the idea of pessimism versus realistic optimism versus blind optimism, right? We don't want blind just positivity. We also don't want to be pessimistic and invest too much in that negative thinking. We need to take time investing in the realistic, optimistic thinking. We need to, and that takes small strategies and some consistency.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any other questions? Sports, mental, psychology, therapy, Brooklyn Nets, anything?
I just wanted to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. It's definitely appreciated. As someone that is a personal trainer who's also in the works of obtaining his performance enhancement specialist, I'm just looking to always add to my belt and my knowledge of fitness and helping folks. So one day I just want to find myself in a position where I'm helping young athletes as well as older athletes. So I feel like everything that you gave us today is like $1 million worth of free game you just gave us. So I appreciate it, thankful for it, and just thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Take it for yourself and absolutely please pass it on.
Absolutely.
For sure. Thanks enough, for sure.
So before we close out, I have one last question from not just a sports or just a mantra set mindset. What are some of the things that we can say on a daily basis that will get us towards our goal? Do you have like any type of mantras or sayings that put us in gear to have that successful outcome?
That's a great question. And I promise I'm not just trying to get out of it in the sense of you need to find that for yourself, right? Mantras in general, cue words that I work with athletes. I absolutely give them examples of where to start of, as I'm listening to the language and what they're saying, I'm gonna reflect back as we're figuring out, okay, how do we move on from a mistake? How do we invest in a positive mindset going into the game? We're going to use language that I'm hearing them saying. So it might be like, I got it. I mean, it could be simple stuff, right? I got this today. Locked in, ready. This one's for mom. Like, you have to find things that are meaningful to you. So love that question because it allows me to talk about the fact that we need keywords. We need to spend time thinking about what drives us. And to me, it's like, how do we get there? You start with something. Write something down of like, this is what I'm going to say to myself to keep me motivated or get me excited about this task, or like be specific of what you're going to say and how you're going to use it, and then try it. And then if it works, great, keep using it. If it doesn't, maybe the phrase is off. Maybe it's not tying you to something that's motivating you right now. Maybe you're not digging deep enough and like really thinking about like what drives you. So spend time thinking about that, right? By being intentional in that area, it can really help, us figure out what the mental skill is, the keyword is for us, the mantra is for us.
Okay, thank you very much. So much appreciated. I want to let everybody know we thank you for your time, for coming and participating in this live session. This is going to be recorded and added to our swag page. Let me quickly, if you're not familiar with the swag website, I will put it in the chat now. 1 second. So yeah, we're quickly building a platform where you can go get all swag resources, see previous videos. Our IT team is uploading a lot of our content, should be live this upcoming week with some of our past events. And I would definitely put this link on the page. But in the meantime, tomorrow, if you still would like to see it in advance from the page, please send me a direct email at anthony.smalls, SMALLS, at mssm.edu. So if you send me a direct email, I will send you the link once this is finalized, so you can see it immediately. But all the content will be added to our swag website. For everybody that's on now, I just want to give you a quick promotion for next week. This is a 5-part series. We will have our nutritionist coming on to talk about sports nutrition, and just trying to get you more content and more things that pique your interest. Please promote with your networks, family, friends, students, schools, so that we can try to just get the word out more. So that will be next week, Saturday at 1 o'clock. So once again, thank you, Dr. Groenewal, for joining. This was a great presentation. If anybody is curious to get the PDF or the PowerPoint that you shared, how can they contact you?
Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to reach out to me via email is probably the easiest. Dr. Paul at inspirewellness.com. Dr. Paul at inspirewellness.com. At the same time, if you find me through LinkedIn or other ways, that's fine too. Whatever works.
Yes, he is on all social media platforms, and quickly put his website in the chat. So that is inspirewellness.com.
Even our if for social media, for those of you who have young athletes, don't hesitate to connect. We try to create a lot of content with both. We're trying out TikTok. It's been an interesting journey, but then mainly Instagram. So if you want more content and more ideas, we try to put a lot about self-talk and other strategies on there.
So thank you all, and we will end this session. We hope to see you next week. Dr. Groenewal, we hope to do more collaborations and events. Definitely, this is the beginning of a great friendship, partnership. So thank you all for joining, and we will end the session. Everyone have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks all.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.